Good afternoon. In support of Nutrition Month, we have J Kaplan here to speak on with respect to nutrition and mental health. Bonnie is a professor emerita from the Cumming School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. Originally, she's from Ohio and did all of her education in the US, the University of Chicago, Brandeis University, in experimental and physiological psychology. She then went to the Faculty of Research in Neurophysiology at West Haven, Connecticut VA Hospital, and then on to Yale University Department of Neurology. She moved to Canada in 1979 and has published widely on the biological basis of development disorders and mental health.
Well, that's a good sign. I haven't said anything yet. So. Well, thank you for having me here. I really wish I knew why it's a lunch and learn and I see practically no food. You're not skipping lunch, are you? You're all going to go back to your offices and have a really healthy lunch. Okay. And people... Oh, did you? The expectation of donuts was a mistake. So listen, I am really delighted to speak to you because I've been on this almost lecture tour of speaking to not academic audiences, but people who have power to make change. And you might not think of yourselves that way, but in my opinion, you guys have the power to influence the lives of people around you. And if you doubt me, think back to what you know, some of you are too young to remember, when the workplace took a stand on smoking. Okay? And even before we had regulations and legislation, the workplace made it uncool to smoke in your office, and people started to quit. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is why you should now shift your interest to nutrition. So, sorry. I'm going to start out with a little quiz. I want you to read these characteristics and just ask yourself what they sound like. Now, depression, you know what that is. Hysteria is an old word, but it's kind of like high anxiety or mania, irritability, self-harm, etc. Don't those all sound like mental health symptoms? But in fact, these were elicited in a group of undergraduate students who were simply deprived of adequate nutrients for 24 weeks. This was published in 1950. And here's the thing, not only is that an interesting finding, but what you can't tell from this slide is nobody was surprised. Why was nobody surprised? Because we have 2,600 years of research and clinical reports going right back to the book of Daniel, showing that inadequate or suboptimal nutrients for the brain results in psychiatric symptoms. What's really surprising is in 1950, nobody expected that that information would be lost, and it has been. From about the 1960s and 70s, with the so-called psychopharmacology revolution, we became a society that just reaches for a pill, and people have stopped considering the role of nutrients in brain function. So that's what I'm here to wake you up about. Now, in my world, we have to give a disclosure slide, and I think it's very pertinent in your world too. I am going to be mentioning some brands, companies. I have no commercial interest in any company or the sale of any product. I never have done, and no company has ever funded any of my studies. And also a disclaimer, some of you out there are going to be thinking, well, you know, there's more to brain function than nutrition, and there is. Workplace stress, dysfunction, PTSD, child abuse, all of these things are causes of mental health problems. It's just not what I'm talking about today, but I want you to know that they're very relevant, okay? This is an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I thought I should say a few words about the magnitude of the mental health problem and what it's costing our society. Secondly, and what I'll spend most of the talk on, is the role of nutrition in mental health so that you see how relevant it is. Third, I'm going to talk about workplace solutions, and I have about 8 suggestions for you to consider, things that I think you folks could be doing. So the size of the mental health problem, it is skyrocketing, both in terms of levels and cost. This is some really interesting data that was published by a leading psychiatrist in the US named E. Fuller Torrey in a book which he entitled The Invisible Plague. And why did he consider mental illness to be an invisible plague? Because he had discovered through scouring data around the world that from 1750 to 1960, the prevalence had tripled. I don't know why, but when I stand in the center here, AV people, I have an echo. Is that something to do with the podium? Or does it matter? Can you hear? Okay, I don't know if it sounds different to you, but yeah. At any rate, a tripling from 1750 to 1960. And interestingly, during the Irish famine, it was even higher. Now, the way to look at those numbers is 1 in 10,000 became 3 in 10,000, and then 7 in 10,000. How many of you know what it is now? Anybody want to, offer a guess? Okay, this is what it is now. And that's true all over the Western world. New Zealand just published data showing it's 50%. There's something wrong, and we're going to talk about it. Here's what it's costing our society here in Canada. The first data point there, this is from the Canadian Mental Health Commission. The first data point is real data in billions of dollars, and this, based on the increase of costs, is what they expect it will be costing our society to treat mental disorders with current conventional methods, I will point out, in each of the next few decades. So the take-home message is we have a problem of epidemic proportions. Conventional treatments are not helping much. Now, conventional psychiatrists would not say that. That's my opinion as a scientist. And I say that because the rates would be going down if we were on the right track. And instead, we keep throwing money into the same old methods. So why should we consider nutrition? I don't have time to give you the 2,600 years of history, but it's fascinating how it was taken for granted. And there were guidelines. There were even clinical practice, what you'd call clinical practice guidelines in 1910, showing that what you needed to do if somebody was showing any kind of psychiatric symptom was to improve their nutrient intake. If you want that information, I have a 45-minute lecture online, and I can give you the link to it. I'm always fascinated by that when I realize I've spent my whole career reinventing the wheel, But we knew this. Okay, so why is this important? Brain health is probably more dependent on optimal nutrition than any other organ. If I had more time, I would have quizzed you and asked you, and most of you would have said, oh, the muscles, we have to have lots of nutrients for our muscles. Not so. It's our brain and our heart which consume most of the energy that we eat and use most of those nutrients. Of course, I'm going to focus on the brain. It accounts for only about 2% of our body weight. It's a tiny little organ up here, only a couple of pounds, but it represents over 20% of the metabolic demands. So it is punching above its weight, so to speak. Now here's a fact that I find people are really fascinated by. Picture a liter, and then in your mind's eye, fill it with blood, okay? And I've been talking for about 6 minutes. 6 of those went through your tiny little brain since I started talking. Isn't that amazing? Every single minute, an entire liter of blood passes through our brain. And this is why. This is a picture of the vasculature of the human brain. This brain is facing that way. That's the forebrain in that direction, cerebellum and back. But that's not what's important. Look at how intricate it is. All of those larger and smaller blood vessels need to pass that blood through all the time. Why? Well, blood is bringing nutrients, obviously, or I wouldn't be talking to you about it, and also oxygen. So that's how we have evolved to need so much blood pumping through our brains. The blood does other things. There are immunologic factors that go up there and removal of waste products, etc. Why so many nutrients every minute? This has to do with brain metabolism. Now, I'm hoping this word doesn't scare you. Metabolism is a very simple word, simple concept. Just means the transformation of one compound to another. But when you're talking about biology, you're talking about enzymatic reactions. So a chemical is transformed to another chemical in your brain because of an enzyme that's working. And that enzyme works optimally only if, guess what? It has sufficient nutrients, which are called cofactors in that biochemical reaction. So I'm going to show you a picture of that. And I just want you to know that this is being used in junior high schools in Alberta. I've used it for every level of audience. And trust me, you're going to understand this when I'm done, even though it might look a little imposing. So I made this slide many years ago because I knew that everybody knew what serotonin was. And I don't have a pointer, but you see the word serotonin over on the right-hand side. And it seemed that everybody also knew that tryptophan was a precursor. You know, we don't eat serotonin. We have to eat the chemicals that enable us to produce serotonin, right? So tryptophan is a major precursor. So I picked those out, and then the pathway is just ginormous. And so I simply asked, what can I fit on one slide? And that's what this is, okay? So it's a little random, and that's a good thing. So what this shows is every single arrow is an enzymatic reaction. You don't need to know those words, obviously, to know that. And you can poke each one on the internet and say, well, which cofactors are needed here? This particular tiny segment has a lot of B6. That means that those steps, I can't say this strongly enough, those steps will not function efficiently anywhere in your brain or body where serotonin is needed unless there is enough B6 every minute of every day, not just once a week when you have a salad, right? What else is there? Copper in trace amounts. Copper there. Iron, a major dietary mineral, in 2 places. Molybdenum. How many of you have had your molybdenum today? How many of you have ever heard of molybdenum? It's a trace mineral. It's in a lot of our vegetables. Okay? If you're eating a variety of vegetables, you are eating molybdenum, which you need for that step to occur. That is why we have to eat fruits and vegetables and other food. Now, I also have a little bit of the dopamine pathway just to show you I haven't biased this talk, but I'm not going to go over it carefully. This one is done in a circular form, and it shows in blue all the different vitamins and minerals, which are cofactors, which get us through those pathways. Same thing. I could do the same thing for the omega-3s, okay? Mitochondria, you may have heard of them from high school biology, the little energy factories. You hear a lot of people say they're always so tired, they're always so exhausted. And why do we need to have nutrients? Because our mitochondria produce ATP. ATP are mitochondria are little organelles in every cell in our brain and our body, and they produce ATP. ATP is what is our natural way of fighting inflammation. You've all heard that inflammation can be bad, right? What do mitochondria need to produce ATP? I'm going to skip over the next 3 slides, but you can guess what's on them. All the vitamins and minerals and omega-3 fatty acids. And what is this slide? Research just came out to show that in Canada, the Canadian Community Health Survey of, I've forgotten how many tens of thousands of Canadians, shows that over the age of 2, on average, Canadians are getting half of their caloric intake from processed food. So we are down 50% right from the get-go in terms of the nutrients getting to our brain because there aren't very many vitamins or minerals there. This is a huge problem. So the take-home message is that we eat for our brains and also all of our cells because of the energy from mitochondria. Think about that neurotransmitter slide, though. I don't want you to think there's a magic bullet. I can't stand it when people say to me, Bonnie, I took my vitamins today, and I say, what about your minerals? Or they'll say, is it really good to take vitamin B, I don't know, 6? And I'll say, well, that's one of about 30. But people are looking for a single magic bullet. It's just beautiful the way we have evolved to need this broad spectrum of nutrients, which occurs in plants. Now, can I prove to you that nutrition influences human mental health? Yes, I can, but I'm going to have to do it really quickly. How many of you have to leave before 1 o'clock? Just give me an idea. Okay, I knew some of you would. Okay, and who knows about those who are on Skype. So there are 3 kinds of data I'm going to cover, and I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 samples of each. But there are studies that I think you'll find very interesting. Just so you know, there are about 15 large population studies that are like tens of thousands of people from countries like that's Australia and Spain and Japan and Europe, okay? Showing that people who eat a whole foods diet, kind of Mediterranean type, and I'll tell you about that, have lower rates as a population, lower rates of mood and anxiety symptoms than populations who eat a lot of processed food. Okay? So that's very interesting finding. I wish they'd stop doing those studies because they're very expensive, and we know it already. What do I mean by a Mediterranean kind of diet? It's important for you to see this slide, I think. Again, I don't have a pointer, but upper left, fruits and vegetables. I'll go clockwise. Fish, if you're not a vegetarian, meat, dairy, whole grains, olive oil, nuts and seeds. And one of the things that you can do to improve your overall health and lower the cost of your food is learning how to cook beans and legumes with lots of spices and seasoning. It's a wonderful way to eat. I'm not saying I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not saying become a vegetarian, but believe me, it is an enormously important thing that everybody could learn. And this is not the Mediterranean diet. Enough said. Okay. Now, this is one other correlational study I thought I'd show you. First of all, because it's in young people, which is very disturbing. But also, it's Albertan. It was done by some people in public health at the University of Alberta. And this is kind of a stylized picture, but it's showing the amount of sadness and worries that about 6,000 children in grade 5 reported. And what they did is they got food frequency information from the kids, and then they categorized them in thirds. Those who had the, excuse me, I have a really dry throat today. I'm not sure why, sorry. Those who had the lowest amount of healthy eating, those who were kind of in the medium, and those who had the most healthy diets. And as you can see from the blue bar, the healthy eaters had the fewest reports of feeling sad and worried. So we need to do this for our kids. We need to change how we eat. So I've shown you some correlational data, but hopefully somebody here is sitting here and thinking, well, that tells us nothing, because it doesn't. Because the reality is that when people are depressed, what kind of food do they want to eat? Not broccoli, not salads, carbohydrates, processed foods. So in order to prove that it's the diet causing the symptoms, we have to have two other kinds of studies, prospective longitudinal ones that show that the diet precedes the mental health problems, and also treatment studies, and there are lots of those. So I'm going to just show you a sampling. This is the only study I'm going to show you about prospective longitudinal data. Somebody thought they'd get donuts here today. You'll change your mind in a minute when you see the study. So this was a sample of about 9,000 people, and it was done in Spain. And they got scores for every person as to how much they ate in the area of commercial baked goods, how much hamburgers, sausage, pizza, they called fast foods, lumped them together for a score for unhealthy diet, and then they divided them into thirds, just like with the Alberta school children, really, okay? What's different about this one is that nobody who participated in the study had any report of depression or anxiety at the time the study started. So they had no mental health problems. And then the researchers sat back and watched and waited for 6 years to find out who developed problems with depression and anxiety. So on the far left is the people who had the lowest consumption of the unhealthy foods, okay? So they had the healthiest diets, and they were arbitrarily given a risk score of 1. The people in the middle, third, really didn't differ, okay? So that's as if, I usually do this by pointing out to the audience. So suppose this third over here, you were the one on the far left. You really are eating your salads and all your healthy food and not eating the processed foods. People in the middle, you eat some things, an occasional donut, whatever. The people on the far right, you were the highest third, and you guys were in trouble. After an average of 6 years, a 50% increase of diagnosis of mood and anxiety problems. What's interesting to me about this slide is it shows that you don't have to be a purist. I could never be a purist about food or anything, actually. So it's okay to eat something that is not a Mediterranean diet sometimes, as long as most of the time you are adhering to a decent diet. Am I saying muffins cause depression? No. Okay, I got asked something like that by a student once when I presented this study. No, but with every bite you're making a choice. And if most of your bites, if a really significant number of your bites are in processed foods, then you're not getting the good food that you should have. And this shows you what eating the rainbow should be like and sometimes is like. So eat the right rainbow. Okay. So I told you I'd also give you some treatment studies. This is a really important one. This is from Australia, and they took a group of 67 adults diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and they randomized them. People had no choice which group they would be in. You can't do a placebo with this kind of study, but there was a comparison. People were randomized either to get dietary counseling or peer support. Now, we know in depression, peer support is very important. You would predict that would have a positive benefit, and it did. But the question was what would happen, of course, in relationship to diet. And then they called it the SMILES trial. First of all, even with depression, people were able to modify their diets to a more Mediterranean kind of diet. But look at this, 32% remission. That means that their depression in 12 weeks was so much better, they were below the clinical cutoff for a diagnosis of major depressive disorder, compared to 8%. And when I show this study, I always make this point because it's really important. If some drug company had a new antidepressant come out this month and clinical trials showed a 32% remission in 12 weeks with no adverse events, only improved sleep, improved bowel function, improved energy, just those are the side effects from improved nutrition, right? It would be on the cover of Time magazine. As it was, the media isn't even interested. It's very, very hard to get the media interested in nutrition and mental health. They talk about physical health all the time. That's why some of my lectures are entitled Nutrition Above the Neck. You hear about it all the time, about cardiovascular disease and everything, right? But mental health. And by the way, the cost was not significantly different in Australian dollars for fast food versus eating healthy food. And I'm sure, although I don't really know, though I could find out, but I suspect they were taught a lot of low-cost recipes with beans and lentils, etc. You don't have to spend a fortune to eat a healthy diet. So finally, the other treatment studies I want to show you, and here I'm going to have to gauge how much time I have, is studies with nutrients in pill form. Is there an argument for nutrients in pill form? So I'm going to show you some data that's not published yet. I hope to write it up soon. This is a plant. Our plants grow in soil. Do you know what plants get out of the soil? They get about 15 minerals. They grab them and absorb them. And then plants, who are much smarter than we are, create 30, roughly, minerals and vitamins out of that. We can't do that. We cannot synthesize our vitamins, very few of them. If you get sunlight on your skin, you synthesize vitamin D. And you can, synthesize a little bit of B12, but not at a usable amount. So we cannot do that. Plants are really precious because then we come along and we eat those 30 minerals and vitamins. So the question we asked recently was, what is the state of the minerals in the soil in Western Canada? And an agricultural specialist from Winnipeg pulled a random sample of 40 samples for me. And I'm going to show you what we found because it's very disturbing. These are macro elements. Now, you're probably not used to the abbreviations. Along the bottom are calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus, okay? Every one of those, there are standards for how much there should be in a healthy soil. And each one is kind of a range. And we asked the question, what percentage of the fields had that nutrient reach at least the lowest level of that healthy range? And as you can see, it was pathetic. I mean, calcium, less than a third. That's a major and important dietary mineral for us. But where I got really concerned is when we looked at the micro elements. And again, I'll read these to you from the bottom. These are boron, iron, manganese, copper, zinc, cobalt, and molybdenum. Okay, now you know the abbreviation too. Okay. And this is very worrisome. I mean, I can tell you animal research shows that copper and zinc need to be in a certain ratio, and without them, you have irritable, aggressive, violent animals. Any pediatrician who deals with iron deficiency anemia will tell you that those children are irritable and angry and violent. And yet, where are we getting it? It's not in our soil anymore. So I think that is one argument. If I had time, I would tell you some of the other arguments, but I'm going to give you just that one argument for why we should look at nutrients in pill form, because maybe we're not getting it in our food as much as we'd like. So here's where I have to mention some companies. Obviously, from what I said earlier, you know I'm not going to bother telling you about studies of just calcium or on mental health or just selenium on mental health, et cetera, et cetera. They're out there. They get funded because the federal agencies like to fund single nutrient studies. Unfortunately, it's not the way the brain works. So this is the entire list of all, oh, by the way, anybody taking notes or anybody out there on Skype, I'll send you all my slides, okay? I should have said that in the beginning. Save you a little ink. Anyway, this is, on this slide, all of the multi-nutrient formulas in the entire world, is, to the best of my knowledge, that have ever been subjected to independent scientific evaluation for mental health. It's not many. Why? Well, first of all, there's not a single federal funding agency that's willing to support this kind of research yet. And a lot of people just don't want to study it. So the two with the most data behind them, by far, coincidentally, were developed here in Alberta. And yet you've probably never heard of them. Some of you might have heard of them. So they started out as True Hope, making Empower Plus. And then the company split in two about 6 years ago, and Hardy Nutritionals makes Daily Essential Nutrients. I don't represent the companies. I have never taken a dime from them, in spite of, if you Google my name, you'll hear all kinds of other things and find out I'm a terrible person, probably. So, well, you can decide for yourself. Anyway, if you want information, go to their websites. Because once we, the scientists, publish our data, it's public domain. You will see our research on many websites involving nutrition, including theirs. Doesn't mean we're endorsing products. But the reality is that they are the only two companies that have really tried to foster research. Not fund it, but foster and encourage research. The result is we have independent scientists from Canada, New Zealand, the USA, and now a large study in Europe based in Holland, Belgium, and Germany, which are starting. That one's just starting, but we have about 35 studies in these other countries that are published and peer-reviewed. And one other thing I'd like to mention is because of ethics committee requirements, and this is probably one of the reasons other companies don't want to deal with research, is we have to have FDA and Health Canada approval in North America. And so that means that the purity, the sourcing, the stability, et cetera, have been evaluated by both countries. Okay. There are many, many studies, as I said, 35 or more. I'm not going to go into them. There's just too much. So I thought I'd pick out a few recent things from Julia Ruckledge's lab. She is a Canadian who is actually my former PhD student, and she's been at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand for about 15 years. But more importantly, she has the most active research program in the world right now in terms of number of studies. So this was a study she did in adults with depression. And this is the change in the depression rating scale, MADRS. That's what that is, pre to post. The purple is the active, and the green was placebo. And what it shows is that the people who got the active had a much greater improvement than those on placebo. She's done a few studies on ADHD, recently reported that 47% on micronutrients, and it was one of the Alberta formulas, were much to very much improved compared to placebo, 28%. Clinical changes, emotion control, etc. And I'm going to skip ahead quickly. These were conduct problems as reported on the left by parent and on the right by teacher. Again, much greater improvement on active than on placebo. But I need to get to workplace solutions because one person already had to leave or wanted to leave, who knows which, doesn't matter. Some of you might have to leave and want to leave. So what can you folks do? Why am I so happy to be talking to people who are out there in the real world, not academics or clinicians, although I like talking to some clinicians? You can create a culture of healthy food. I often tell clinicians how to approach the topic with their clients. Just say, there's increasing evidence that how we eat affects how we feel. Let's talk about your diet. Physicians, I've given a couple talks to family doctors. They don't know how to bring it up without sounding accusatory. What are you eating? So, I hand out things like this. I encourage every mental health clinic to teach cooking and educate about nutrition and mental health. So I have wondered whether some of this could be addressed in the workplace also. Now, it's important to tell you what I'm not talking about. You don't need dietitians to do what I'm suggesting. Not that I treasure dietitians. They're my heroes. They have one of the hardest jobs in the world, getting people to change the way they eat. But for what I'm suggesting or focusing on today, you don't need that. Because I'm not suggesting you do something like teach specialized diets. If people are gluten sensitive, they'll figure it out and they'll stop eating gluten, fine. Or dairy or whatever. People figure it out. Or if they want to try some of the other diets out there. In terms of mental health, the real important lesson is very simple. And that is the Mediterranean type of diet, whole foods diet, cooking from scratch, as opposed to processed food. So again, food from this slide and not this one. So here are a few suggestions, very concretely. I don't know if you are large enough on any site. Could you have a healthy foods committee? If so, by the way, I'd be happy to work with you to put together any materials that would be useful for you. You could foster a workplace culture of good nutrition for snacks and meetings. I can't stand going to another departmental meeting where they give me pizza and soda. And I carry my little brown bag in, Teach people use the opportunity to teach people about hummus and nuts and seeds, in addition to vegetables and fruits. Education about why it's important, and again, I'd be happy to help you with any of that. The possibility of cooking classes, shopping hints, just comparing the cost of eating beans and lentils, 1 or 2 days a week compared to having processed food, etc. There's a lot that could be done with pictures, graphics, sharing your recipes. This is one that I think is important. Do you notice this is when people are really prone to go, do you have vending machines here? No. Some of you say yes. No? No. Okay. Does anybody say yes? Have you been seeing that? Not right in your, okay. So this is when people go to the vending machines, though, looking for something. And this is the time when you could brainstorm and have lists and ideas of things for healthy snacks. And this is my favorite one. I used to, I'm pretty much retired now, and so I now can cook anytime. But in past years, my husband and I were both working full-time, and we would try to, load up on healthy food on the weekend. But you get to Thursday night, and oh God, what are we going to have tonight? It's just really hard by the end of the week, right? So sharing Thursday night dinners is what, sharing recipes. Improving the food choices in vending machines, I guess it's not that relevant to you. We're considering replacement drinks. I just took that picture yesterday. I was thinking about it, how we don't drink soda in our family, but sometimes we want something carbonated. And now we have these nifty things that are just carbonated water and a drop of fruit juice. They're 0 sugar and no artificial sugars. I don't get money from those companies, okay? I wondered whether your employee assistance plan could help by having some follow-up talks or brainstorming sessions, maybe encouraging people to get together for cooking classes. I don't know if this is appropriate because I don't know your workplace. And I wondered about paying for nutrient supplements if they are paying for any conventional care now. And again, I don't know if they do. But I'm going to end by showing you, I hope I have time, one thing about money. I don't have time to go into detail, but this is a case study that is published, and I'll send it to any of you who want it. I have 2 published like this now, of people who were severely mentally ill. This is a child who was psychotic and at Children's Hospital, hallucinating, etc. And long story short, he was sent to outpatient care, and he started one of the Alberta formulas because the outpatient psychiatrist really didn't have any medication to try on him that hadn't been tried at Children's Hospital. And although she said this is snake oil, she doesn't say that now. But I don't have anything better to offer. And so then I was called in to manage the data. And this is his psychosis score, his hallucinations, visual and auditory. And he graduated high school. He still has some anxiety. Cost to healthcare is the point I wanted to make. We had a health economist pull his data, 6 months inpatient compared to 6 months on micronutrients outpatient, and it was less than 2%. Same thing with the other case study that we published. We could save the public purse a lot of money. I'm quite certain of that if we could just get more people interested in this. So here's my email address. If you want my slides, please email me. It'll be in PDF. I don't send them out as PowerPoint. I will send you links to Julia Ruckledge's TED Talk and various lectures. I run 2 donor-advised charitable funds, so if anyone has any source, I'm always looking for it because my junior I'm not looking for funding, but my junior colleagues cannot get grants yet to study multiple nutrient kinds of treatments. And you can follow our Facebook page. And I'll leave that up maybe so you have my email address. And I think I've left 15 minutes for questions, so may I just open the floor? Okay, and if you have to go, that's okay. Or even if you just want to go, that's okay too. Any questions? Far corner? Thank you. Pardon?
How do you assess fried foods?
Fried foods?
Yeah, like when you show the processed foods, you have hamburgers and French fries. And
Right.
my son would argue that those are still whole foods. But they're fried, so we think that they're junk food.
Oh, well, they're probably somewhere in between, unless you're concerned about cardiovascular health, and then you can be pretty sure that the oil that it's being fried in is not very good. But, I mean, you're just better off. That's an interesting question. We know that heating things to a high temperature kills a lot of vitamins. So you can, how old's your son? A teenager. You know, it's no accident that peak onset of mood and anxiety problems is in the teen years. That's when we lose control of how they eat, and they don't make good choices for a number of years. So I think that you can tell him with confidence that he's not doing the best by his brain. But maybe he's eating tons of good things the rest of the day. I don't know. Let me go side to side here. Any questions from here? Yes.
Thank you very much for this good information. It's quite impressive.
Thank you.
It's surprising from some
New
point
to
of view.
some of it.
Yeah, right. Yes, because I was focusing, when I talk about the communication with the kids about the mental health, I was really totally focusing on something else. Not so much on the nutrition part. So thank you very much for this good information. And if I get the slides tonight, I'm going to present to my kids.
To your kids. Okay.
One question I have is, you mentioned the nutrition in pill. So how could I know I need it or not? You mentioned the nutrition, the mineral types in Alberta's soil.
That's and 4 provinces, not just Alberta.
Okay, so some of the parts are maybe too high or too low, right? But if we look at the food we can buy from the store, many of them are not from Alberta or even Canada, right? So they are from all over the world. So how can I know if I need to take some pills or not?
Yeah, you can't. That's the simple answer. It's such a difficult thing for me to say that. First of all, you don't know where your food is grown, and even if you know the country, you don't know what the soil is there. None of us can know that. And there is brand new technology that is going to enable us to have an app someday on our cell phone so we can go to the grocery store and hold it up to an apple and know what it's called the Brix reading for the quality of the nutrients. But right now, it requires destroying the apple to do it, and so you can't do that in the grocery store. So anyway, someday we'll know more about that. And you also cannot rely on blood tests because blood tests are peripheral blood. They don't tell you what's in the brain. And more importantly, they don't tell you what your brain needs. There is no question that some people have a need for more nutrients than other people. And I always use myself as an example. I have a bad genes in my family for all kinds of problems, but not mental health. And I think I could eat junk for a year and not get depressed or anxious. I haven't tested it, and I don't intend to, but I'm pretty sure it's true. I don't know what depression feels like. I don't know what anxiety looks like. That's why, Meredith, I offered to do my own introduction. So, but other people, we know, eat well by most standards from food frequency questionnaires, like in Julia Rucklich's research, and then take one of the Alberta formulas, one of those two, and they get better. They must have inherited a need for more nutrients in their brain. And we already know of at least 50 examples of this in physical health, okay? So we know it's a phenomenon in humans, and so it's probably relevant in the brain too, but we don't have the final proof of that. Sorry, I kind of went on and on, but basically, it's very hard to know. Just do the best you can. Eat as well as you can. Over here, yes.
What about, and again, I know there's a lot of controversy on this subject, but organic food versus just
organic versus,
shop the organic aisle, or are you fine in the rest of them?
So thank you for asking that. I actually, before I got those 40 soil samples, I had only 2. One from a non-organic field in Winnipeg, outside of Winnipeg, and another from an organic field almost adjacent to it. And we were stunned to see they were both bad. So we had very low nutrients, very low minerals. And so we had quite a talk about that, and I ended up actually being a keynote speaker at an agricultural meeting. This was very interesting in February because people in the agricultural world have to know about this. Organic is good because it means pesticide-free, toxin-free. It's good, and it means probably those farmers are a little more likely to enhance the nutrients in the soil. But it doesn't mean they're doing it. It says nothing about nutrient density. And you can look in the scientific literature and find some studies of organic vegetables where they look like they're higher than average in nutrient content, and others that say they're no difference, and probably a function of the different fields and all. So you cannot assume you're getting more nutrients. Isn't that discouraging? It is for me. Anyway, over here, yes?
What's your view of protein shakes? There's a huge
protein shakes.
industry where folks who work out especially overload themselves with protein shakes.
Yeah, so protein shakes are interesting. There's no question that North Americans get plenty of protein in general. But if you're working out a lot, a protein shake might be a really good thing for you. And if it's going to be that or breakfast before you go to work, make your protein shake. But a lot of those premixed protein shakes, if you read the labels, you're getting a lot of chemicals. So I would say make your own protein with some kale in it, some good healthy milk, etc. Which is, I didn't mean to say there's any unhealthy milk. If you're not sensitive to dairy, just milk, whatever. And make it, same as with food, make it from scratch. Don't rely on processed things. Yes?
Some of the pictures you showed, the Oreos, the hamburgers, chips, they not only lack the nutrients in the ingredients, but they also have
junk, toxins,
other things put in there. Is there some way to measure how much of it is lack of nutrients in these foods versus the addition of things we shouldn't be eating? And I ask that because I think of the perspective of if I made muffins at home or cookies at home versus eating Oreos.
Right. That is a really good question. It's one that I often wonder about myself. There is research, and I actually did some of it in the 80s yet, showing that it's some of the additives, the non-nutrient additives in food, are causing problems for people. And so how much of what I'm showing you here is because of the additives as opposed to the nutrient content. And they tend to go together. I mean, if you're eating healthy, nutrient-rich, unprocessed food, you're not getting those chemicals. That's the only thing you can be pretty confident of. So I don't think science has a perfect answer for you yet.
But a muffin that I make.
So, you want me to endorse your muffins?
They're really good.
Well, where are they? That's what we need instead of the donuts.
Let's say I use white flour and I use brown sugar and chocolate chips and all that. Would you argue that it's the same as eating something that is a store-bought?
Well, it's probably not the same, but take a look at what's in the chocolate chips.
Yeah, fair enough.
And white flour is not the best of all things to have in general. I mean, you know, remember the middle third in this study from Spain? Be in that middle third and enjoy a muffin occasionally. I have to come back to you and see if there's one here. Yes?
So I guess it's kind of relevant, my question to the previous question. How much of a process is processed food?
Oh, yeah.
Because you can say cooking is processed.
Right.
A bread is a processed food.
Right.
A sugar is processed
Right.
food. Honey is processed food. Like they do rely.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I didn't bring this slide, but the World Health Organization categorizes and defines 4 levels of processing. They're way ahead of us, okay? And I didn't go into it, but you know that slide I showed you that reported that 50% of Canadian caloric intake is from processed food? It's actually from the lowest ultra-processed, virtually all chemicals kind of food. It's even worse than I told you, okay? But there are levels of processing. So you know, I'm not a purist, as I said, and if you are trying to eat healthy food and preparing it from scratch and teaching your kids to cook and shop that way and shopping around the outer aisle of the grocery store, don't worry about, you know, and the other thing, by the way, you know, in terms of even the pesticides and the toxins and all, our best defense against toxins is optimizing our ATP production from our mitochondria, which means the better health that you have and the more ATP you're producing, and no, you can't measure it, but anyway, you have to trust that you are, the better able you are to withstand the insults, the toxins, the stressors in life. So,
Just got an online question.
okay, could I answer? He had his hand up first, and we'll come to online. Yes.
Probably one of those controversial ones, but artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, artificial sweeteners. Yeah, you know, I'm not on top of the literature. About a year ago, I know there was concern that it was messing up our microbiome. You know that we are 10% human, right? And 90% of the cells in our body are not human cells. And most of them are in our gut, and they are every kind of little organism that you've never heard of, bacteria and fungi and, you know, everything. They're in our gut, and they're doing wonderful things, and we want them to stay healthy. But there was some concern, and based on data, that artificial sweeteners were messing up the microbiome. I don't really know. It just seems to me that whenever I see someone drinking one of those diet drinks, they're always very chubby people. And stevia is more natural, isn't it? I don't know if there's any research on it. Google, can you go on PubMed so you get scientific literature, Medline? If you want, send me an email and I'll help you do it if you want to look at the scientific data on it, because I'm not on top of it. Yeah. Oh, online, yes?
There was a question online about the side effects of dehydration on our brain functions. Is that part of what you're talking about in terms of the right nutrients?
No, water is very important, okay? Like everything, too much of it can kill you. Did you know you can die from too much water? And that's because your electrolytes go off. So proper hydration is really important, especially in seniors. It's not part of what I'm talking about in particular, but seniors, you know, the tea and toast routine of many seniors, especially those who live alone. I'm a senior. I don't live alone. I cook from scratch, but I see this in some of my people I encounter, is that they are not getting their nutrients and they are not hydrating, and they end up in emergency rooms very often for just dizziness, unexplained dizziness, and they're just not drinking enough. But that's all I can say on it. Was there another question over here? Oh, I'm sorry, here and then there. Okay, yeah.
How much is too much water?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, but I'm sure that you could drink 8 glasses a day and not kill yourself. Because people recommend it all the time. Other people say that's too much. Yeah. Okay, over here.
A lot of fad diets sort of say cut carbohydrates is sort of the easy cut to losing weight. What are your thoughts around some of these? Cut this, keep this.
Yeah. For weight loss in particular? Well, I'm not a weight loss expert, but I do know a little bit about the ketogenic diet, which is the basis of, you know, the Atkins diet years ago. that's been around for a long time. There's no question people lose weight on it. I don't know if they keep it off. That's the issue. And you cannot stay on it just for weight loss. You can't stay on it forever. You're not getting your fruits or vegetables. But it's the really hot topic in ketogenic research is how it's stopping seizures for people and things like that. So stay tuned on the ketogenic diet for that. But that's all I can say. I'm not a weight loss expert. My impression is any diet works as long as you stick to it. And also it's easier to stick to protein because you're never hungry than carbs, where your pancreas is reacting and taking it out of your system with insulin, and you get into that cycle. So there's some logic there. Anything else online?
Yeah. Someone else asked about suggested replacements for bringing in donuts on Fridays. Anything but donuts, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I didn't say this, but I know many workplaces, it's like somebody walks in with a box of Timbits and walks by and everybody goes, ooh, I've done it, even though I know I'm not going to eat one. I don't know why I do that, What is the point? Encourage them to be creative. Have a competition. If people are regularly bringing things in, you said on Friday, I think, see who can bring in the healthiest and yet still interesting food, and avoid those processed things. Okay, yes?
A lot of the research you refer to associated mood with diet or nutrition. What about Alzheimer's or other?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I get a newspaper called Brain in the News about once a month, and the latest issue, it's out of New York, latest issue said, no drug is helping Alzheimer's. They are a complete and total loss, and some of the drug companies have decided they're not going to even explore anymore. What they didn't say, and I'm going to write them a letter, is there's some really interesting data on how the Mediterranean diet reduces your risk of dementia. And there's even one study that came out, and it's in a major journal, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences out of England, I think, that showed that people who were randomized to a Mediterranean diet had 1/7 the brain cell loss of those who continued to eat the regular way. I mean, they did MRIs and they showed gray matter did not shrink as much. So I told my friend whose brother is in the early stages of dementia, but I don't know whether it's a finding that will hold up. I don't know. I don't have a handle on the entire. I know some studies have not found anything. It's really hard to study cognitive decline because you can't wait just 6 years. You have to wait a really long time sometimes to see changes or lack of changes. And it's very hard to get people who are going through cognitive decline to change their diet. And so it's hard to do mental health research. I think it's even harder to do that. But if there is any hope anywhere, I think it's the Mediterranean diet.
What component of that is wine?
Gee, you're the first.
Seems to come from the Mediterranean.
This is the guy who talks about donuts and wine. I know about you. Wine is in there, and you know the data on heart disease, and a small amount of red wine seems to protect us from heart attacks, but I don't know about mental health. Yes?
Does the microwave impact the nutrient density of the food when you cook using microwave?
I knew. I got to tell you, the research on whether we should use a microwave befuddles me, and I don't know how to interpret it, and I find it so useful for rewarming things that I still use it myself, some, not a lot, but I just spent 2 weeks on an organic farm, and they did not have microwaves in any of the cottages. They were forbidden. So I don't know, I've got to get up to date on that myself.
I have one more question online about cooking oil. So oil is part of the Mediterranean diet. Is there cooking oils that are better or worse?
Yeah, there are. I mean, without a doubt, you should try to get good olive oil and use it certainly for salads, etc. The only problem with olive oil is sometimes in baking, it changes the flavor. And if you're doing something like a saute and it's going up to a high heat and it's smoking, then there are some bad changes that you don't want. So other good oils are avocado oil. And, you know, a bit of canola oil is not going to kill you, but people are moving away toward those healthier oils. Yeah. Anything else? Or shall I let you all go back? And now I'm going to chase you back to work, whether you want to go or not. You've been a good audience, and I thank you for your questions. They've been very good. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We really appreciate it.
No, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.